Hello, friend, and welcome back to the Alex Makes VR podcast. Today is day number 1 of my new 10-day challenge, where every single day I'm going to be spending 5 minutes spitting a festive fire to help you get through the last month of 2020. But what are you going to do for the next 10 days? What are you going to spend 5 minutes doing to make yourself prouder of who you are coming out of what's got to be one of the weirdest years on record? Let me know. Reach out to me on social media. It's Alex Makes VR on Instagram and Twitter. So for this first day, I thought I'd start off with a big picture question. Are you ready to analyse your lives, guys? Yay! So the other week, I was having a cup of tea and a chat with a friend. And this is a friend that I always end up kind of having big picture and big philosophical conversations with. But we ended up down this wormhole and we ended up asking each other the question, if you knew that if you continued on the rest of your life from today, that when you died, it would reset and nothing that you did would have mattered, it wouldn't have counted. From this day onwards, life doesn't count because it's going to reset to this exact moment. What would you do? Kind of like Groundhog Day, but you would get to live the rest of your life. It would only be once. It's not like you get to live life over and over and over and over again. It would just be that you would have this lifetime from this day on to do whatever it is you wanted to do, because when you died, it would reset to this very moment. And what would you do? What would you do with your life? What would you do differently? What's something that you would change immediately? What's something that instantly jumps out to you as, oh yeah, I know for 100% I would, quit that job and I would go all in on this, or I would downsize my house, or I would pack everything up in a backpack and just leave. I would see the world. I would, chase down that person that was the one that got away, or I would go on an epic adventure. I would pour all of my money into making my passion project. I would go back to uni to learn Mandarin, whatever it is. What is the thing that's jumped out to you immediately? And the important thing, I think, with something like this is just to listen to your gut reaction. And it might be quite extreme. The things that we came up with were quite extreme, but within them, there was kind of a grain of truth. There was a grain of truth of something in there that we were clearly not necessarily 100% happy with our current lives. So what is that for you? What would you do for the rest of your life if you knew that you were going to get another chance to do it? And isn't even that concept, isn't it interesting that you would have this other version in your head? And then you start to think, don't you? You start to think about, well, if I was to go down the route of doing something that was just totally socially unacceptable, borderline evil, just because, you just kind of, you'd never actually do that in your lifetime because it would be a horrible thing to do, but also ruin your life. But also you knew that there would be no consequence if you did it this time around. But even then you start to think about, even with that scenario, you start to think about what does that say? Does that say that, I feel constrained, I feel strangled by the social conditioning, by the way that society is set up? I don't feel like I can be free. I feel like I'm having to obey these rules that have been laid out for me, Or if it's something mad and magical and adventure-based, or it's it's literally a total escape from your current life. It's the total opposite. Again, what is that saying? Is that highlighting to you that there are elements of your life that maybe you could take step towards changing? Because that's the whole point of a question like this, right? It's not to actually go and live that inconsequential life of reckless abandon and do whatever you want, because of course, well, depending on what your belief system is, chances are that you consciously will only ever have this one life, whatever you believe in it, like an afterlife or whatever. But, you know, if we assume that you are to only have this life as your conscious self, of course you're not going to go do those things. But what is something that potentially you could change? Because realistically, you do only have this one life, and it could be taken away at any moment. That's what this year has really shown us. And in fact, I think for a lot of people, 2020 was the year that you realised how much you... I guess what's the way I'm looking to say this? Like for me personally, for example, 2020 has showed me how much I rely on travel and social gatherings and going to events and being here, there and everywhere. That's part of my identity. That's part of what I love to do. It's part of my job that I couldn't live without, like by being trapped at home and not having places to go and not having these big social events or keynoting at events. Like that's really been really, really hard. And so to me, that's shown me, oh, okay, so that is something that's very important to me. Whereas I didn't necessarily know that before. Before I kind of, you know, you can sometimes slip into that trap of being like, oh God, you know, I want to stay put for a while. I want to stay put. Imagine if I could just have some time off, and if only the world would just stop for a second. Oh dear. Did I wish the pandemic? Oh dear. My bad. I'm sure a lot of you listening to this might have accidentally at some point dreamed up a scenario where the world would stop and you would get time. But what that's actually done is allowed you to analyse what are the bits of your life that you love and what are the bits of your life that you want to change, right? So I'm going to stop here because this is already over 5 minutes, and the whole point of these festive fire challenges is, that's what I'm kind of calling it in my own head, although you could be listening to this at any time of year, is to keep this short and sweet. But I urge you, take that question. What would you do if you knew that when you died, life would reset to this very moment? Everything you did from here on out would not count. What are some of the things that you would do? What are some of the chances you would take? What are some of the leaps of faith that you would have? What are some of the wild adventures you would go on? And see if there's any essence of those things that you could actually bring into your life. That's it from me today. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you tomorrow, my friend.